Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov, and welcome to our Parsha class, the Parsha of Emor, page 780 in the Good Chumash. L'chaim. Good to see you all. So, this week's Parsha, we're going to speak about the time that we're in right now on the Jewish calendar, days of the Sphira. And we mentioned last week the name of Rabbi Akiva. We mentioned a story of Rabbi Akiva about not being judgmental. We mentioned his famous line that love your fellow as yourself. Avas Yisrael is a cardinal principle in Torah. But we'll talk a little bit about his life and a fascinating life story, and very applicable to us as well. And so that's the Parsha of Emor. There's a lot in it. It's in the book of Leviticus, which deals a lot with the Levites. So the first half of the Parsha deals with various laws regarding to the Kohen and the Levites who are serving in the temple. So certain laws in regards to them. But I want to jump to the second half of the Parsha. The second half of the Parsha speaks about the Jewish holidays. In fact, being a Baal Koreh, someone who reads the Torah in Shul, I'm kind of familiar with the second half of Emor because we read it during the holidays. We actually just read part of it during Pesach, so it's familiar. So the Torah goes through the holiday, starting with Shabbos, and then we go on the Jewish calendar. It begins with Pesach, goes to Pesach, Shavuos. Speaks about the various offerings and the way it's celebrated. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, right? It kind of goes through the calendar of the Jewish holidays. So let's read a few verses and in regards to the time that we are in now, which is the time between Passover and Shavuos, right? So on the Jewish calendar, Passover is the 15th day of Nisan. The Jewish people leave Egypt, and then 7 weeks later, the Jewish people receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. It's the holiday of Shavuos. And in between, we have the days of Sphira, which is the days that we are in now. We count the days from Pesach to Shavuos. What is the significance of this counting? So let's see what the Torah says about it, and then we'll kind of delve into it and talk more about it. So we're going to start on page 797, 796, verse 15. We are in chapter 23. Verse 15, talking about right after we speak about Passover. Passover being on the 15th day of Nisan, and on the second day of Passover, there was a very unique offering that was brought in the temple. It was called the offering of the Omer. Omer is a measurement. And the offering was that they would bring a omer of barley in the temple as an offering on the second day of Pesach, and this was from the new harvest, the new grain, and the idea was that it was forbidden to even harvest and sure not to eat any of the new grains that from this year before the offering of the Omer was brought. I'm not certain about this, but my understanding is that because of the seasons are a little different the way it is here in America and in Israel, so the season for harvesting grain is really just around now, like springtime. Is that true in the States as well? I think I think it might be a little different over here because of the different because the it's a little later, but in Israel, this is the time. This is the time. In fact, now, as you just saw in the news, right after Pesach, they go out to the field to cut the grain for next year's matzah. Because now is when it's ready. And if you don't cut it now, it starts to rain and it gets wet. So they actually cut it now. This is the season. So every year at Pesach, what you weren't allowed to harvest the new grain until the offering of the Omer was brought on the second day of Pesach. It was brought from barley. Later on Shavuos, they brought it from wheat, but this was brought from barley, and this was like to permit everyone to cut their grain and to use it for like flour, bread, whatever we use it for. So until Pesach, it was forbidden. Now it was allowed. That was done, a special offering that was done on the second day of Pesach. Now, after we bring this offering, the Torah continues about starting to count the days. You got to count the days from the Omer offering. We count 7 weeks, and on the 50th day, we bring another offering. And this offering is actually brought from wheat, not from barley. And this is like to celebrate the new grain, right? Because as you know, Israel is very much an agricultural economy. It definitely was then at the time, and therefore it was a big simcha, it was a big celebration. We know this as Shavuos. It's the day that we received the Torah. Torah, for whatever reason, does not mention that clearly in the verses, but that's the idea, that for 7 weeks, we count from one grain offering to the next grain offering, we count 7 weeks. Let's read this inside. Verse 15. You should count for yourself from the day after Shabbos, meaning from the day after the first day of Passover, from the day that you brought this Omer, the wave offering. How many days do you count? Sheva Shabbosais, you should count 7 complete weeks. Now, interesting, if you notice, again, in English, it's not always so accurate, but the Hebrew says, Usfartem lochem, you should count for yourself. Usfartem, you should count. Lochem, yeah, we know you should count. So the emphasis over here is that the mitzvah of counting is not just on the calendar, on the community, on the base. Each individual has to count. And that is how we do it today, right? We count the days during the Sefira time. Each individual is supposed to count on their own, not just like, hey, we know the count, right? We count 7 days of Shabbos. We don't literally have to count. Today's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 6. Today is Shabbos. We have a calendar. We know every 7th day is Shabbos. We don't have to count it literally every day. The Sefira, we can't just look at the calendar. Okay, 7 weeks later, that's when Shavuos is. No, we have to actually count it. Each individual has to do this count. And then on the verse 16, you have to count these 50 days until the following 7 weeks. And then on this day, you have to bring a new meal offering from the crop for Hashem. From the places where you live, perhaps it means in Israel or something like that. You should bring this meal offering, this bread offering. It should be 2 loaves from 2/10 of an ephah, the measurement of the loaves. And here's the key word I want to emphasize today. This meal offering, this bread should be baked, chametz, leavened. Then it continues on with the other sacrifices that were brought together with this offering, etc. And in the verse 21, it said this should be a holy day. It's a day that we don't do work. It's a day of Shavuos. It's another holiday of the Torah. So what's the Torah telling us over here? That you have one meal offering brought on Passover. You have another meal offering 7 weeks later brought on Shavuos. And this second meal offering must be chametz.
Enjoyable.
The first offering, could that be chametz? No. Why? First of all, it's Passover. Second of all, unbeknownst to many, the temple was pretty much chametz free all year round. Whenever the Torah says you should bring a meal offering, it was always matzah. They never used chametz. The showbread. We know there was a table in the temple, and there was 12 loaves of bread. It's actually mentioned in actually this week's parsha. We're at the end of the parsha. Talk about it. 12 loaves of bread that was there from week to week. Every Friday they would switch it out. I think it was Friday, and that was also matzah, or it was baked in a way where it wasn't chametz. It wasn't chametz. The only two times where they had chametz in the temple was this offering, the second meal offering on Shavuos, and there was a Thanksgiving offering. Someone that was bringing an offering to thank Hashem for saving his life, for her life. That was also chametz, but generally it was always matzah. Now, it kind of makes sense that there should always be matzah in the temple, because we talk about the significance, the spiritual symbolism of matzah and chametz. Matzah is so much more holier, right? So seemingly, it makes sense that there should be matzah all year round in the temple. So the question is, why specifically 7 weeks later, the holiday of Shavuos, we're counting from Pesach 7 weeks, and this offering, the meal offering, specifically has to be chametz. Torah mentions chametz te'afena. Make sure when you bake it chametz. Make it leaven. Don't make it those holes. Don't do it quickly. Let it rise. See it puff up. See it overflow. Let it be, like Michael says, enjoyable chametz. Not hard, crispy matzah. Why? What's the significance of it?
It's ready to go forward out of Egypt and leave it behind, hopefully, which we haven't.
Dina's saying we left Egypt already. We're moving forward.
We cleansed ourselves with the Emor.
That's the stage of matzah. Lance is saying we receive the Torah, it has to be joyous. I don't know if I guess I'm like the anomaly over here, but I actually enjoy matzah. I enjoy matzah,
but not because 8 straight days.
Yeah, 8 straight days is a little much on the stomach. This past Shabbos, here we had a kiddush, and I see, we had challah, obviously, people enjoying it. And then I had someone here was sitting eating matzah. I'm like, you didn't have enough matzah? No, whatever, eat matzah, right?
He's
preparing, right? But he's preparing the wrong way because it's supposed to be chametz. Oh, we got to count down. Okay, but the point is, what's the meaning behind it? The meaning, you can say it's more enjoyable. Passover is supposed to be an enjoyable time. In fact, I just read this over Passover. Some people say that you're supposed to say refer to Passover as man simchasenu, the time of our rejoicing. Right? It's the holiday. Every holiday is supposed to rejoice.
Counting up too.
So what's the significance behind it? So sometimes you have to kind of look at the symbolism of something, the spiritual meaning behind something, to appreciate what this is really all about. So chametz, obviously, it's we have the story of the Jewish people. They had to leave Egypt in a hurry. They weren't able to wait for the dough to rise. They ate matzah, but there's more to it, right? Matzah symbolizes something, right? Matzah means something. Chametz also means something. Generally, what does chametz and matzah symbolize? Matzah, or I should say, chametz symbolizes ego. Ego. And matzah symbolizes humility. And it's also like literally, right? So matzah is flat. It shows on someone who's humble. Ego is, puffed up. Exactly. Sometimes puffed up with a lot of air, right? There's nothing really to it. A lot of air, right? Something's like you buy a bag of potato chips, right? It's a little potato chip in a big bag of air, right? So the matzah, right? It's filled with nothing, no sustenance, right? Nothing real. It's just ego, right? And generally we say humility is a very important character trait that we should have. So matzah is definitely something you want to go with, right? Because we all want humility. It's important. Matzah Pesach is the beginning of our journey. It's when we were born as a nation, and we want to make sure we have that proper humility when we're young to kind of shape us in the right way, like a young little tree, a sapling. When the tree is young, you're able to kind of guide it, and when it's older, when it's stronger and bigger, its trunk is strong and straight because when it's young, it was guided. So as young uh, children being born on Passover, when as a nation we were born on Passover, we want to make sure we have a good dose of humility. That's why we have matzah. Chametz, that's ego, arrogance. We don't want arrogance. Arrogance is not good. Stay away from it. So we stay away from chametz. So now the question is, so why should chametz ever be permissible? Why is it permissible after Pesach? And why is it obligatory 7 weeks after Pesach in the temple to specifically bring an offering of chametz? Chametz te'afena. Suddenly it's holy. Suddenly chametz we're celebrating. Well, we're celebrating arrogance.
Isn't making bread a mitzvah?
You mean the mitzvah of challah?
Yeah.
The mitzvah of challah?
Challah. Yeah. So that's,
Right. So the mitzvah of challah, by the way, good point, Dina. We refer to challah, like chametz challah, as challah, but it's really a borrowed term because challah is really the mitzvah of separating dough from the batter. We take challah in the matzah bakery. We take challah from matzah. Because matzah also has to have the mitzvah of separating the dough.
Oh,
we refer to the chametz challah, the breaded sweet bread, as challah, but that is a little arbitrary. That's just like a term that we use for this type of bread. But the biblical term of challah, the mitzvah of challah, is to take dough from the batter. So it could be from matzah, it could be from your kakash cake, it could be from any thick dough that is made, whether it's challah, whether it's bread, whether it's bagels, whether it's whatever it is, we separate challah. It doesn't only have to be from baking the challah bread as we know it. So the mitzvah is to separate dough from certain size batter. The matzah bakeries take challah from the matzah as well. So that's really the mitzvah. So it doesn't have to be chametz to do the mitzvah, right? It's any dough, any dough. Interestingly, because matzah, we don't want it to rise, so we actually don't take the challah dough. We don't separate the dough before we bake it. But then it's an extra few seconds of the dough sitting and not being worked on, and it may rise, it may become chametz. So with the matzah, we actually first bake the matzah, and once the matzah is baked, we separate not dough, but we separate some matzah out of the pile, and that is the mitzvah of challah. That's just a parenthetic comment. Interesting because matzah, we want to make sure it's worked on so quickly it doesn't rise. But the mitzvah of challah applies whether it's chametz or matzah. The mitzvah of challah applies. So that's really the mitzvah. But the truth is, like I said, there is a mitzvah of chametz. The mitzvah of chametz is you can eat matzah all year round if you'd like. But there's one time a year in the temple that you had to use chametz, and that is Shavuos. There's a mitzvah. So we do celebrate chametz. How do we celebrate chametz? So here is where we have a little bit of the second idea of what the counting of the Omer is really about. The Torah doesn't mention the significance of this counting. Why do we have to count 7 weeks? Each person has to count. But we're told by the Hasidic masters that this counting is, and again, a personal count, each person has to count, is really something of personal growth. The idea of this counting is that visafarta, which means usfarta, which means to count, also means to shine, to make something shine, to polish something, right? When you have a stone, you got to polish it. What happens when you polish it? It starts to shine. We have to start polishing ourselves. The idea of counting the Omer is to work on our own character traits, our personalities, and to refine it, to polish it, to make it shine. In fact, in the Siddur, when we mentioned the, I got a Siddur? when we mention the daily count, together with it, we also mention the various character traits that a person has. Have you noticed that? So in the siddur, we say each day, what day of the count it is. And then we have, it's also in the English, right? We have a certain character trait. So it's chesed of chesed, gevura of chesed, tiferes of chesed, malchus of gevura, tiferes of gevura, right? We have 7 times 7. We have 7 character traits, 7 emotions. Each of the 7 contains part of 7. So it's basically 49 altogether, 7 times 7. And each day we are refining one of these character traits with us. And it's a process. It takes 49 days. Each day we're supposed to be refining our chesed, our attribute of kindness. And then within kindness, there is kindness of kindness. There is discipline of kindness. There is beauty of kindness. We have the 7 emotions, which each one has subcategories of 7 subcategories as well. So each day of the count of the sphere, we're supposed to be refining ourselves. What happens when a person's fully refined? We got rid of all of our negative characteristics. Now we have something called ego. But now our ego is not arrogance. It's called healthy self-esteem. It's a healthy self-concept. It's a healthy ego. And that's chametz. But there are 2 types of chametz. You can have chametz, which a person is good for nothing, but it's very arrogant. It's empty. It's full of hot air. That's no good chametz. That's chametz before Passover. That's chametz before Pesach. And that's forbidden chametz. That's negative chametz. That's not a good ego. That's arrogance. For that we say, get rid of it. Get rid of it on Passover. We don't want that. We want humility. So we started the process of humility. You got rid of your arrogance. And now we need to find a good balance to have a healthy ego, a healthy self-esteem. You start with breaking down, getting rid of all the narishkeit, getting rid of all of the garbage. And now we have to build ourselves up. We shouldn't be like, say, a shmata on the floor. Don't let everyone trample over you because you're so humble. You have to know who you are. You have to be proud of who you are. You have to know your qualities. You have to have confidence in who you are. You have the ability to achieve. Sometimes too much humility is not good. So it's good so when you begin the process of building a person up, you begin with humility. That's number 1. Humility is where it begins. That's the base. That's the foundation. A healthy dose of humility, a healthy dose of matzah. 8 days is pretty good, right? The doctor prescribes 8 days of matzah. That is the first prescription that you're getting for this process, for this journey. After 8 days of eating matzah, after 8 days of complete humility, now we start building up your character. You're refining yourself for 7 weeks. After 7 weeks, now I have a healthy self-concept. Now I have a healthy ego. I know who I am, and I can eat some chametz. And I have to eat chametz. I have to know that I have the ability to achieve. I have a good self-esteem. That is why 7 weeks later, there's a mitzvah to eat chametz. And now it's a healthy chametz. That's the idea of Shavuos. And that's the idea of receiving the Torah. Now, take the Torah and run with it. Be proud of who you are. You know you have the ability to it's not arrogant. Oh, look at me, I'm so much better than everyone else. No. You know who you are, you know your qualities, and go with it. Right? Humility ultimately is really it's a mixture of both, right? Because a true humble person knows their qualities. They just know that it's given by God. You got to thank other people. You got to thank your teacher. You got to thank your parents, right? You don't take credit if you don't, if you have proper humility, but know your qualities, right? If someone has a good quality, if someone's a talented musician, right? And someone tells them, wow, you're an amazing musician. Nah, I'm not so good. That's not called humble. That's called lying. Humble means, thank you so much. I thank God every day for this talent. Or I thank my teachers, I thank my parents, I thank my, right? So you don't have to boast about it. You're not arrogant about it, but you know who you are. You know your qualities. That's not a contradiction to humility. That's humility with a good self-esteem. Not to praise, not to put other people down that don't have this quality, right? You have the right perspective, but you know who you are. That's humility together with a good chametz. It's a good balance of matzah and chametz. And that's what Shavuos is all about. It takes 7 weeks to find this proper balance, but eventually you need it. And that's why there's a mitzvah to have chametz on Shavuos and throughout the year, right? Chametz is permissible and preferable.
You have hummus after.
Now, this leads us to the story of Rabbi Akiva. Because the story of Rabbi Akiva is very much connected to this time of year. And it's also a story of knowing your qualities, knowing what you could achieve, and knowing that you could achieve. So what's the story of Rabbi Akiva? The reason why it's connected to this time of year is, as we mentioned already, that during this time of year, during the sphere of time, is when the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 students, died in a terrible plague. Until today, we mourn this plague, this death, certain things that we don't do, live music, marriage, things like that. We don't do it during this time period. Who was Rabbi Akiva himself? Rabbi Akiva was a man who was illiterate. He never went to school, and he didn't know the basics of Torah study. He was a simple shepherd. And he gets to know this young girl by the name of Rachel. And Rachel is the daughter of one of the greatest Torah scholars of the time. And at the same time, her father was also the wealthiest man in Jerusalem. His name was Kalba Savua. Kalba Savua is actually in not Hebrew, in Aramaic, thank you. In Aramaic, it means a satiated dog. Why? How did he get this name? Because the Talmud says he was so wealthy that anyone that came into his home hungry would walk out completely satiated, completely full. So they got this name, Kalba Savua. But he was a very, very wealthy, very generous person. In fact, later on, during the siege of Jerusalem, he was one of the 3 philanthropists who were supporting the entire city. And a wealthy person and a big Torah scholar, a person who valued Torah study. And when he found out that his daughter Rachel is getting married to Akiva, he wasn't happy. It's Rachel, got to marry a Torah scholar. You're marrying this guy Akiva. What's going to be with you? What's going to be with their grandchildren? You can't do this. And she said, no. Akiva's a special person. I want to marry Akiva. And he says, if you marry Akiva, you're not getting anything from my possession. Nothing of my wealth is going to you. Zero, zilch. And she said, I'm going with Akiva. And she did. She marries Akiva, and she lives a very simple life on the farm and with the animals as a shepherd. And that's what Akiva was. He was a beautiful, beautiful personality, but he was totally not involved in Torah study. And Rachel would, from time to time, mention to Akiva, by the way, if you ever wanted to go and study Torah, don't worry about me. You could go spend time in yeshiva. I'll be fine at home. And Akiva said, me, I'm an old man already. I should start learning Torah now. I haven't done it as a kid. I don't know the basics. I can't do this. And she would say, okay, but if you ever decide, you know you have my support. And Akiva thought to himself, I just can't do it. He was 40 years old. And one day he was walking with his sheep, in the fields, and he notices a rock. And the rock he sees has like an indentation, like a little hole in the rock. Interesting. And he notices that from the nearby water stream, there's a little bit of water dripping down on that spot on the stone. Drip, drop, drip, drop, little drops of water, but consistently dropping water dropping on that exact spot on the stone. And he realized that this must be going on for probably many years. The water, drops of water dripping on the stone, and eventually it actually affected the stone. It made a little ditch, a little hole, a little indentation in the stone. And as he's looking at it and thinking about it, he thinks to himself, wow, water, something so light, just like water, stone, something very hard, but the water is able to penetrate the stone if it's consistent. And he says, what does it say about me? I always say that I have a heart of stone. I have a mind of stone. Nothing goes in. I try to study, nothing goes in. I don't have a mind for it. The Torah is compared to water. If I let it drip, drop, consistently, maybe I have hope. Maybe it will penetrate my mind. Comes back home, he tells her, his Rachel, okay, I'm going to yeshiva. I'm going to yeshiva, I'll be away for 12 years. I guess that wasn't so uncommon. 12 years, I'll take a little vacation. Do we know if he gave her a picture of himself? We don't know. Did he give her a picture of himself before he left? You should know how I look when I come back. Long story short, he goes, he starts to study. He's a 40-year-old man. Maybe he's a little embarrassed, right? Starting to study the basics, but he studied and he studied. He didn't give up, and eventually there was a breakthrough. And he was able to study Torah, and he was able to understand, and he was able to ask good questions, and he was able to study further and further until eventually, instead of him studying from others, people started coming to him and asking him, "Hey, Akiva, I heard that maybe you can help me out to understand this verse, understand this, right?" And he started having followers following him and studying from him. And after 12 years, he became one of the greatest sages. Not Akiva, he was Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva, and he had thousands of students, 12,000 students. And the story goes that he comes back home and he basically hears from his wife that I'm so happy that he's studying Torah. Maybe he wants to study another 12 years. I'm so happy, as long as he's studying Torah. So he goes back to yeshiva. 24 years he was in yeshiva, for 24 years, and he accumulated 24,000 students.
He never thought it.
He didn't see his wife. He overheard.
He was walking in the house, as I recall, and he heard her talking to a friend.
Talking to a neighbor, and the neighbor was saying, "Rachel, what's with your husband? 12 years, he's gone. He said he's coming back after 12 years." And she said, "I'm so happy he's studying. Let it. If only he hears me, let him stay another 12 years." He says, "You know what? I'll go back for another 12 years." But the point is that after 24 years, he comes back to town, and this time he has 24,000 students behind him. Oh, the great sage Rabbi Akiva came to town. All the townspeople came to welcome him, and Rachel as well was coming to see who's coming to town. Who is this big Torah scholar that everyone's talking about? And she sees from the distance, hey, I know this man. I see the picture of him, right? He looks the same, right? This is my Akiva. So she starts to push her way through the crowd to get up close to him, and people are like, "Hey, get out of the way! This is where all the big shot Torah scholars. Hey, what are you doing here?" Eventually, she makes it through, and Akiva sees her and says, "Make way for Rachel. All of my Torah study and all of your Torah study is all thanks to this woman, to Rachel." We have to go to Israel, and we didn't have an opportunity to go to Tiberias when we were in Israel. Tiberias is a great city to visit. Maimonides is buried there, and also Rabbi Akiva and his wife Rachel are also buried a little on top of the mountain in Tiberias. So the next time you're there, put that on your itinerary to go visit their grave in Tiberias. They're buried not in the same place, but like not too far from each other. Maybe a 5-10 minute walk from each other. But that's the story of Rabbi Akiva. And then after, unfortunately, 24,000 students, he died in the plague, and he continued with another 5 students, one of them being Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi, famously the author of the Zohar, who later passed away on Lag BaOmer. One of the reasons why we celebrate on Lag BaOmer is to celebrate the life of the Rashbi. But the point is like this: a 40-year-old who has lived life for 40 years, right? We've done my thing. How many of us are willing to make a total change at 40 years old, right? And Akiva says, I tried. I was unsuccessful. This is just not who I am. This is what we call a healthy dose of chametz, a healthy dose of proper confidence is where Akiva had. So you know what? I could do it. I could try. And he did, and he was successful. And we also have to have that as well. We have to have not arrogance, but confidence. It's a different type of ego. It's a healthy ego. It's a healthy chametz. That's what we need. We need that to know our qualities, to know what we could accomplish, what we could achieve. We have to be confident in ourselves. That's healthy. Someone is so humble and say, what am I worth? I don't have the ability. I can't do it. Other people could do it. Other people are better. No, you can do it. You can do it. Just try. You'll be successful. What do you think other people are angels? Everyone tries. Everyone makes mistakes. You also can do it. You have the ability. Believe in yourself. When you believe in yourself, you're able to accomplish. And it's also a good dose of pride, not empty pride, not arrogant pride, but a healthy pride of who you are. As a Jew, being proud of who you are, that's a good dose of chametz. When I was in Toronto now for Pesach, we had a guest at one of our meals, and someone that he looked like a yeshiva boy. Like I didn't know him from before. My family, I guess, knows him from Toronto. He has his yarmulke, he has a beard. Okay, it was holiday. He was wearing like nice clothing, but he looked like a religious Jewish boy. And he tells me that he's not in yeshiva. He's in college, York, I think it's called, in Toronto, which is a local college. And I know about York because it's in the news, unfortunately, because there's a lot of anti-Semitic incidents happening on that campus. A lot of protests, a lot of this, and this is not just new. This is going on from when I was a child, right? They always had this problem. They had problems with their menorahs going up there. They had a sukkah there that was vandalized. I mean, there's always anti-Semitic issues over there, especially now in the last few months with all these protests and stuff. It's a difficult place to be as a Jew, and especially someone who's so visually Jewish. So I asked him. I said, "How's life on campus?" He said, "Do you walk like this on campus with your yarmulke?" Yeah, of course. So what happens is, this is who I am. And when people see it, this is who I am. And I'm proud. I'm not hiding my identity. They appreciate that. They appreciate that. So today, more than ever, we need that healthy dose of chametz. Be proud of who you are. You want to wear a yarmulke in the street? Wear a yarmulke in the street. You want to be visually Jewish? Be visually Jewish. Because this is who I am. Be proud of who you are. That is healthy chametz. If it's just arrogance, that's emptiness. That's air. That's chametz you got to get rid of. But after Pesach, when we have a good dose of humility, now we're able to build our character up. And now we have healthy chametz. This is what we need now more than ever. I'll leave you with that, a little thought for the week. I want to make a quick announcement, or two quick announcements. First of all, we have our JLI coming up this Tuesday. Please join us. Decisions of Fate, medical ethics. You can also get CME and CLE credits for this. So if you'd like to join in person or on Zoom, please let me know. It's starting this Tuesday. And also for those who are here locally, here in New Orleans, this Shabbos, we have a special Shabbos called Shabbat 132 in honor of the hostages, the 132 hostages. We're going to gather together here in Shul and do a special prayer at the end of services at 12 o'clock. We have a Kiddush lunch. And also, we have someone who is a Nova Festival survivor, someone who's been by that October 7th festival. Unfortunately, some of his friends were killed, but he miraculously survived, and he will be here in person on Shabbos to tell over his story. So we encourage you to come join us to see how someone experienced firsthand miracles on that day. So he'll be speaking during the Kiddush lunch on Shabbos. An email should go out probably tomorrow with the more specific schedule of the day. But if you have family and friends, please join us this Shabbos together. And hopefully the time Shabbos comes, we won't have to daven and pray for the hostages. We'll be able to celebrate with the hostages that hopefully will be freed before Shabbos. So, L'chaim, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.